Welcome to Motivational Humanity. You are not alone.
There's a moment, and maybe you know exactly the one I'm talking about, where you're sitting in a room full of people, or maybe you're completely alone at 2 a.m, and this quiet, aching question rises up from somewhere so deep inside you that it almost takes your breath away. Where was God when that happened to me? Not spoken out loud, never out loud. Because we've learned, haven't we, to fold that question up small and tuck it somewhere no one can see it. We smile on Sunday morning. We say, "I'm blessed." When someone asks how we're doing, we bring the casserole and we hold the hand and we say all the right things. But that question, it stays. And I want you to know something before we go any further together. There is no shame in having asked it. There is no weakness in the fact that life has sometimes felt so brutally unprotected that you wondered, in your most honest moments, if anyone was really watching over you at all. Because here's what no one tells you. Here's the unspoken truth that gets buried under all the church bulletins and the inspirational calendars and the well-meaning advice. Faith doesn't erase the feeling of exposure. It doesn't automatically seal up the places where the wind gets in. And for women like us, women who have spent decades holding everything together, raising children, burying parents, surviving marriages or surviving the end of them, building something out of almost nothing. We know what it feels like to be exhausted from being strong. We know the weight we carry, not just the physical weight. Though Lord knows our bodies have their own stories to tell. I mean the invisible kind. The weight of worry that you wake up with before your eyes even open. The weight of a phone call you're dreading, or a doctor's appointment that looms over your whole week like a storm cloud. The weight of watching someone you love make choices that are breaking your heart in slow motion and knowing there isn't a single thing you can do to stop it. That weight. And somewhere along the way, maybe gradually, maybe all at once, you started to wonder if the protection you'd been promised was real. You prayed and the thing still happened. You believed and the person still left. You trusted and the diagnosis still came back the way it did. So what do you do with that? You know what most people do? They get quieter about it. They stop asking the question out loud because they're afraid of what it makes them look like. Afraid that admitting doubt is the same as losing faith. Afraid that if they say, "I don't always feel protected," somehow God will hear it as a rejection. But here's what I've come to know. And I mean know in the way you know something not because someone told you, but because you've lived it and cried through it and come out the other side still breathing. God's protection was never meant to look the way we were told it would. We were handed a version of protection that looked like a shield wall, like a force field. Like if you believed hard enough and prayed long enough, nothing bad would ever touch you. And when things did touch you, when they didn't just touch you but shattered you, the silence felt like abandonment. But what if the protection was always something different? Something quieter. Something that didn't prevent the hard thing, but instead was woven into the hard thing, present in it, moving through it, holding you in the places you couldn't hold yourself. What if sanctuary wasn't a place you arrive at before the storm, but something you discover you were standing in during the storm, only you couldn't see it until it passed? I think about a woman, she could be any one of us, who has driven home from a hospital visit or a court hearing or a conversation that left her feeling completely undone, and she sits in her car in the driveway and she doesn't go inside yet. She just sits there, breathing. And something, she can't name it exactly, something holds her in that car, in that quiet, in that in-between place. That's not nothing. That's not coincidence. That is the quiet whisper of a protection so intimate, so personal, so woven into the fabric of ordinary moments, that we almost miss it because we were looking for something louder. And I think you've felt it. I think that's exactly why you're still here. Can I tell you something that took me far too long to understand? We spend so much of our lives waiting for the rescue that looks like rescue. The dramatic intervention, the burning bush, the parting of the waters. And there's nothing wrong with believing in those things. They're real, they're possible, and some of you have your own miracle story that you hold close like a precious stone. But most of life happens in the ordinary, in the Tuesday afternoons, in the slow, unglamorous, unremarkable days where nothing parted and nothing burned and you just kept going. And we discount those days, don't we? We look right past them because they don't feel like evidence of anything. But what if they are the most profound evidence of all? Think about the bridges you've crossed that you didn't even know were bridges. The conversation that didn't happen. The one that would have destroyed something irreplaceable. Because someone got a phone call at just the right moment, or traffic made you late, or you simply decided to wait. You didn't see it as protection then. You saw it as inconvenience or coincidence or just Tuesday. What if God's protection is fluent in Tuesday? Here's where I want to sit with you for a moment, because this is the part that cuts closest to the bone for women in our season of life. We are at an age, and I say this with complete love and zero condescension, where we have seen enough to be both deeply faithful and deeply complicated about that faith. We've lived through enough cycles of prayer and outcome to have developed what I'd call a sophisticated grief about how protection works. That's not cynicism. That's wisdom that hasn't found its home yet. Because here's the unspoken truth that lives underneath it all. We're not just asking, does God protect me? We're actually asking something far more personal, far more tender. Am I worth protecting? And that, right there, that's the real question, isn't it? After years of pouring yourself out. After decades of being the one who held the family together while quietly falling apart in the bathroom at night. After being overlooked or undervalued, or loving someone who didn't love you back with the same ferocity you loved them. After shrinking yourself to fit into spaces that were never built for all of who you are. You started to wonder, somewhere in that soft and vulnerable interior, whether you were the kind of person that divine attention was really meant for. Whether the protection was for other people. More deserving people. People who hadn't made the mistakes you made, or carried the history you carry, or struggled with the same dark thoughts that show up uninvited at 3 a.m. And I want to stop right here and speak directly to that part of you. You are not a footnote in the story of God's protection. You are not the exception clause. You are not too complicated, too broken, too far down the road, or too late in life to be held with fierce and specific tenderness. The protection isn't rationed based on your worthiness. If it were, none of us would qualify. Not one. But here's where it gets even deeper. And this is the part that shifted something fundamental in me when I finally allowed myself to receive it. Protection, real protection, the soul level kind, isn't just about what God keeps away from you. It's about what God keeps within you. Your sanity when the situation called for you to lose it. Your capacity to forgive when every reasonable instinct said don't you dare. Your ability to laugh, genuinely, freely laugh, even in seasons that had no business producing laughter. Your stubbornness, your beautiful, God-given stubbornness, that made you get up one more time when you had absolutely nothing left to get up with. That is protection. Not the absence of the storm, the presence of something unbreakable inside you that the storm could not touch. I think about the women I've known, maybe you've known them too, who went through things that should have ended them. Losses so profound they rewrote the whole landscape of a life. Betrayals so deep they poisoned the well of trust for years. Illnesses that dismantled the body and demanded that the spirit either collapse or expand. And somehow they expanded. Not because they were superhuman. Not because they didn't cry until they couldn't breathe, or rage at the sky, or spend months in a fog so thick they couldn't see their hand in front of their face. But because something inside them, something planted there long before the trouble came, held. That's the sanctuary I'm talking about. Not a place you go, a place you are. And it doesn't get built in the good times. I'm sorry, but it just doesn't. The sanctuary gets built, stone by stone, prayer by tear by sleepless night, in the exact moments you were sure you weren't going to make it. Every hard thing you've survived wasn't evidence that you weren't protected. It was the construction of the very thing that now protects you. Which means all that pain, all those years, all those chapters you wish you could rewrite, none of it was wasted. None of it was God looking away. Every single piece of it was being woven, quietly, purposefully, into an interior life so rooted, so deep, so thoroughly yours, that nothing that comes next can uproot it. You were being built love. You were being built the whole time. So now we have to have the honest conversation. The one that sits just beneath the surface of everything we've talked about so far. Because it's one thing to hear that you were being built. It's one thing to nod along and feel that warm recognition in your chest when someone names your strength out loud. It's another thing entirely to actually receive it, to let it land, to let it change the way you move through what's left of your life. And I think, gently, carefully, that some of us have become so accustomed to surviving that we've forgotten how to be held. We built the armor because we had to. Nobody is questioning that. When life came at you the way it did in your 30s, your 40s, the brutal clarity of your 50s, you did what you had to do. You got tough. You got efficient. You learned to handle things because the alternative was falling apart, and falling apart wasn't an option when there were people depending on you, bills demanding attention, a life that needed to be kept running, whether you felt like running it or not. But here's the quiet, uncomfortable reckoning that comes with this season of life. The armor that saved you can also seal you. And I'm not talking about becoming soft or naive or pretending the world is safer than it is. I'm talking about something far more subtle. I'm talking about the way we can become so defended, so expertly, so unconsciously defended, that we start blocking out the very things we've been longing for. Connection rest. The willingness to be seen without performing strength. The ability to say I need help without feeling like you've failed some fundamental test of womanhood. The capacity to sit in a moment of genuine peace without immediately scanning for the threat that must surely be coming. Because that's what prolonged vulnerability does to a nervous system. It trains you to distrust stillness. It makes sanctuary feel suspicious. You find a quiet moment, and instead of resting in it, part of you is waiting for it to end. Waiting for the other shoe. Waiting, always waiting for the protection to run out. And so the deepest question of this whole conversation isn't really, does God protect me? It's, will I let myself be protected? Will you allow yourself to stop managing everything for long enough to be held by something larger than your own considerable competence? Will you loosen your grip, just slightly, just enough, on the story you've been telling about how everything depends on you staying vigilant? I know how terrifying that sounds to some of you. Because the last time you let your guard down, something happened. Someone left, or something broke, or the thing you trusted turned out to be untrustworthy, and you swore, quietly, deeply, you swore that you would never be caught off guard like that again. And that vow made complete sense at the time, but you've been keeping it ever since. Long past the moment that made it necessary. Long past the relationship, the loss, the betrayal that forged it. You've been standing guard over a door that no longer leads anywhere dangerous because the vigilance became so automatic you stopped checking whether it still served you. This is the transformation I want to invite you into. Not a dramatic overhaul, not a complete dismantling of everything that got you here, but a gentle, deliberate, one small moment at a time practice of receiving. Receiving rest as something you've earned and not something you have to justify. Receiving kindness without immediately wondering what the person wants from you. Receiving the quiet moments. The morning light on your kitchen table, the unexpected phone call from someone who was thinking of you, the song that comes on the radio at exactly the moment you needed to cry, as deliberate, as specific, as meant for you. Because here's what I've noticed, and maybe you've noticed it too. The older we get, the more fluent we become in the language of the ordinary sacred. The younger version of us needed the big signs, the dramatic confirmations, the unmistakable moments. But somewhere in the accumulated wisdom of these years, we've developed a sensitivity, almost like a spiritual sixth sense, to the quiet whispers. The feeling that stops you before you make a decision that would have cost you everything. The inexplicable calm that settles over you in the middle of a situation that has no business being calm. The stranger who says exactly the right thing. The friend who calls on the exact day. The verse that falls open on the exact page. You've stopped calling those coincidences, haven't you? Good. Because they aren't. They are the fingerprints of a protection so consistent, so faithful, so personally calibrated to the specific frequency of your life that once you start seeing it, you cannot stop. It's everywhere. It's been everywhere. It was there in the darkest chapters when you were absolutely certain you were alone. It was there in the transitions that terrified you. It was there in the losses that remade you. It was there. You just needed to be far enough down the road to turn around and see it. And this is what our season gives us that no other season can. Perspective. The long view. The ability to look back over 5, 6, 7 decades of a life and trace, with your own finger, on the map of your own story, the through line of care that never broke. Not a life without hardship, not a story without darkness, but a thread unmistakably present, running through every single chapter, including the ones you're most ashamed of, including the ones you've never told anyone about, including the ones you'd give anything to undo. That thread didn't break. Not once. And if it didn't break then, through all of that, what makes you think it's going to break now? This is the personal reckoning I want to leave you sitting with before we move into the final part of our conversation together. You have evidence. Decades of it. A life full of moments where something held when it should have broken, where you made it through what you were certain would end you, where grace showed up in the most unlikely packaging. A difficult person who taught you something irreplaceable, a closed door that forced you towards something better, a season of loss that excavated a depth in you that comfort never could have reached. You have the evidence. The only question now is whether you'll let it be enough to finally exhale. To lower the armor just enough to feel the warmth. To stop waiting for the protection to run out and start living like someone who knows, in her bones, in her marrow, in the place beneath all the words and all the theology and all the complicated history, that she is held, that she has always been held, that she will continue to be held, not because she earned it, not because she got everything right, but because that is the nature of the love that made her. And some things, thank God, do not depend on us at all. I want to end where we always secretly hope someone would begin. Not with a list. Not with 5 steps to a more protected life. Not with a bow tied neatly around everything we've walked through together, as if pain is a package that can be wrapped and shelved and referred to tidily on difficult days. I want to end with the truth. The whole warm, unglamorous, beautiful truth. You are going to face more hard things. I know. I know that's not what the end of a conversation like this is supposed to sound like. But I think you're too wise, too seasoned, too beautifully acquainted with the real texture of life to want anything less than honesty from me right now. And the honest thing is this: the road ahead still has its difficult stretches. There will be more mornings that arrive heavy, more phone calls that rearrange everything, more moments where you reach for certainty and find only the quiet, unresolvable mystery of a faith that doesn't always explain itself. And God's protection will be present in every single one of them. Not as a guarantee that the hard thing won't happen, but as the absolutely unshakable, non-negotiable, already decided certainty that you will not face it alone. Not for one breath, not for one heartbeat, not in the dark of the hardest night or the blinding confusion of the most disorienting day. Not alone. I want you to let that settle somewhere deeper than your mind. The mind will argue with it. The mind has receipts. It keeps very careful records of every moment that felt like abandonment, every prayer that seemed to dissolve into silence, every time you needed an answer and got only waiting instead. The mind is a wonderful, complicated, sometimes exhausting instrument, and it will make its case. But there's a place beneath the mind, beneath the memory and the reasoning and the carefully constructed theology. A place that is quieter and older and somehow more knowing. A place that doesn't need to be convinced because it already knows. Go there. That's not escapism. That's not spiritual bypassing or pretending the hard things aren't hard. That is the bravest, most counter-cultural act available to a woman living in a world that profits enormously from keeping you anxious, keeping you doubting, keeping you perpetually one purchase or one achievement or one self-improvement away from feeling safe. Choosing to rest in the knowledge of your protection, not because circumstances confirm it, but because something deeper than circumstances knows it. That is radical. That is an act of profound spiritual courage. And I think you're ready for it. Not because your life has gotten easier. Not because the questions have all been answered or the wounds have all finished healing. But because you've been in this conversation with yourself, really in it, the way you rarely let yourself be, and something has shifted. Something small maybe. Something that won't show on the outside for a while. But it's there. I want to talk for just a moment about what it looks like to actually live from this place. Because transformation without practical rootedness has a way of evaporating by Thursday. And I don't want that for you. I want this to stick in the way that real things stick, not as a feeling you chase, but as a knowing you return to. It starts with noticing, not a discipline, not a regimen, just noticing. When you wake up tomorrow morning, before the day rushes in with its demands and its noise and its urgent need for your attention, before all of that, take 30 seconds, just 30, and notice that you are here, that you made it through the night, that whatever yesterday carried, you are present in this new morning, and that is not nothing. That is everything. Notice the moments throughout your day when something could have gone wrong and didn't. Notice the resources that show up, not always dramatically, often quietly, sometimes in the form of a person who holds a door, or a body that keeps functioning despite everything it's been through, or a mind that finds its way back to center after being knocked sideways. Notice the thread, because once you start noticing the thread, you begin to build what I'd call a living testimony. Not the kind you recite at church, though that has its place, but the kind that lives in your nervous system. The kind that, when the next hard thing comes, and it will come because that's the nature of a full life, your first response begins to shift. Not immediately, not perfectly, but gradually over time, the fear that used to arrive first starts arriving second. And the knowing, that deep, old, unshakable knowing, starts arriving first. That is the work of a lifetime, and you are already further along in it than you know. I also want to say something to the part of you that is carrying someone else's pain right now. Because many of you came to this conversation not just with your own fear, but with the fear for someone you love. A child who is struggling, a grandchild whose choices are keeping you up at night, a friend who is facing something enormous, a marriage that is fraying, a family that is fractured, and you have been trying, with everything you have, to extend your protection over them, to cover them with your prayers and your presence and your fierce, tireless love. Can I tell you something? That love is not separate from God's protection. It is God's protection wearing your face, moving through your hands, expressing itself through the specific, irreplaceable love that only you carry for that specific, irreplaceable person. You are not just a recipient of protection. You are, in the most profound sense, one of its instruments. Every time you have sat with someone in their pain without trying to fix it, every time you have spoken truth into someone's life when it would have been easier to stay comfortable, every time you have shown up, tired, imperfect, uncertain, but present, you have been the answer to someone's prayer for protection. You may never know which moments those were. That's okay. The not knowing is part of the grace. But I want you to carry this with you. The love you give does not return void. The prayers you have prayed over your children in the dark of night, the ones that felt like they dissolved into the ceiling, they didn't. The times you stood in the gap for someone who didn't even know you were standing there, those were real. Those mattered. Those are woven into the fabric of lives that will carry the imprint of your love long after you're gone. That is legacy. That is the most durable form of protection there is. Love that outlasts the body that carried it. So here is where I want to leave you. In this final moment of our conversation together, you are not a woman waiting to be protected. You are a woman who has been protected. Consistently, faithfully, specifically, through every chapter of a story that is still being written. You have been held through things that had no business leaving you whole, and yet here you are, present, still capable of love, which is the most astonishing miracle of all. Because love requires vulnerability, and vulnerability requires courage, and you have been courageous in ways that will never make headlines, but that heaven, I believe, keeps very careful and very tender record of. The sanctuary you've been looking for isn't somewhere you're trying to get to. You're already in it. You've been in it all along. In the quiet whispers of ordinary days, in the grace that showed up wearing Tuesday's clothes, in the unbreakable thread that ran through every dark chapter and pulled you, gently but unmistakably, toward morning. You are held. You have always been held. And on the days when you forget, because you will forget, we all forget, may you find your way back to this knowing quickly. May something small remind you. A shaft of light, a bird outside your window, a memory that rises up without warning and shows you, from a different angle, that you were never as alone as you felt. May you receive protection not just as a promise for tomorrow, but as a present reality you can rest in today. And may you spend whatever comes next, not in the exhausting labor of trying to be safe, but in the deep, quiet, revolutionary freedom of a woman who already knows that she is.